tear gas filling the air, panic in the streets, police raining down blows on unarmed students. On July 20th, 2026, the center of New Delhi looked like a war zone. For millions of Indian families, these standardized tests are the only bridge across the wealth gap. A high score represents the singular hope for an escape from generational poverty. This chart shows the sheer scale of the crisis leading up to the protests. Over 23 million students sat for exams like NEET, the medical entrance test, as well as CUET and the UGC NET, but the system they relied on collapsed. Consecutive paper leaks forced massive cancellations, costing the economy an estimated 5,000 crore rupees in wasted travel, coaching, and logistics. The leaks created a two-tiered system. Wealthy families bypassed years of study by simply purchasing the stolen papers on the black market. Meanwhile, the honest students who had sacrificed everything found their scores devalued and their futures erased. When a state fails to secure the integrity of its own exams, it breaks its promise to the youth. Stripped of their only legitimate path forward, these students brought their frustration out of the classroom and onto the streets. The movement started online. They called themselves the Cockroach Janta Party, a satirical name chosen by students who felt the government was treating them like pests that could be easily ignored or squashed. The digital frustration soon spilled into the physical world. Thousands of students organized a peaceful, indefinite sit-in at Jantar Mantar, the historic staging ground for protests in the heart of the capital. The protest found its anchor on June 28th, when prominent activist Sonam Wangchuk arrived at the site and initiated a hunger strike. The government was suddenly caught in a trap of its own making. Allowing a widely respected, award-winning figure to starve in central Delhi would be an international public relations disaster. But giving in to his demand, the resignation of the Education Minister would signal weakness to the political opposition. This is the specific power of a hunger strike. It weaponizes time. As Wangchuk's body weakened day by day, public sympathy swelled, putting a ticking clock on the government and building inescapable political pressure. The state chose a covert solution. At 3 a.m. on July 18th, special police units mobilized. Their objective was to extract Wangchuk from Jantar Mantar during the narrow morning window when crowd numbers were at their lowest. Officers dressed in plain clothes climbed onto the stage and held up white bedsheets, building a makeshift wall to block any cameras. Behind the sheets, they grabbed Wangchuk, forced him into a waiting ambulance, and confiscated the phones of anyone trying to film. To justify the raid, the police claimed they were responding to a severe medical emergency. Their report stated Wangchuk's potassium levels had suddenly crashed to a highly dangerous 2.9, making forced hospitalization an absolute necessity. But this chart traces his blood tests across that exact time frame. Independent laboratory tests taken the afternoon before the raid showed a normal potassium level of 4.3. The day after the raid, it was 3.5. That sudden plunge to 2.9 only exists on police paperwork. The legal paperwork was also flawed. The federal court order only mandated daily health monitoring at the site. It gave zero authority to forcibly detain him. Faced with mounting political pressure, the state weaponized medical bureaucracy to execute an illegal detention, attempting to quietly eliminate a political threat. The extraction backfired. From his hospital bed, Wangchuk managed to smuggle out a single handwritten note. It was a direct call to action: march on Parliament on July 20th. In response, authorities deployed signal jammers to kill mobile internet access at the protest site. The students simply bypassed them. They switched to offline messaging networks like Briar and BitChat, apps that use Bluetooth to build connections when thousands of people are packed tightly together. By the morning of July 20th, the area was a pressure cooker. Tens of thousands of young people poured into New Delhi from across the country. In a bid to control the swelling numbers, police barricaded the metro stations and sealed the exits at Jantar Mantar, trapping the massive crowd. At 11 a.m., the containment strategy failed. With no central leadership left on the ground to coordinate the mass of people, fractured groups of students finally broke through the barricades and surged toward the Parliament building. The police retaliation was brutal. They activated AI-powered facial recognition networks to log identities, launched tear gas into the densely packed crowds, and swung lathis, heavy wooden batons, at the heads and bodies of the unarmed teenagers. Government supporters had spent weeks trying to label the students as foreign agents. But the sight of riot police beating teenagers who were merely asking for a fair exam shattered attempts to frame the movement as a conspiracy. The volume of protests and the backlash against police brutality forced the government's hand. On July 25th, Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan officially resigned. With their core demand met, the massive crowds packed up and dispersed. But in the quiet hours after the victory, a small group of students stayed behind. They didn't damage property or riot. They organized a cleanup crew. Working through the night, volunteers put on masks and gloves, picking up discarded bottles, food packaging, and paper plates. They bagged up thousands of kilos of garbage that had accumulated over the month-long sit-in. These were the same students the state had beaten and tear-gassed just days earlier. In the end, they secured the accountability they demanded for their education, and then stayed behind to clean up the streets.